And good Wednesday evening, everybody. I'm not Scotty Powell, nor am I Joey, because everybody else on the panel has decided to take the night off, and it's just me tonight. And, of course, our special guest as well. For a little bit of housekeeping, this is June 17th, 2015, Carolina Weather Group weekly podcast, videocast on Google+. This is the June 17th edition, where we're talking a little bit about ham radio and how it benefits the weather enterprise as a whole. And as someone who works in the media now, I can tell you that we certainly appreciate ham radio and, of course, all the SKYWARN spotters that help it out. So we've got John and Lee tonight joining us, and you both are with, one's with Charlotte, one's with Piedmont, right? Or is there a difference between the two?
Well, they actually coexist.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the Piedmont Spotter Group, that's just a bunch of spotters hanging out and kind of trained together. But when it hits the fan, that's when you Charlotte Regional SKYWARN, yeah, that's when that brand comes out.
Gotcha. All right. And you guys work directly with the National Weather Service in Greenville, Spartanburg, to kind of help facilitate the warning process and get information to them. Talk a little bit about, first, how you guys kind of got into this, and if a little bit about the background of ham radio and being involved in SKYWARN. I'll throw that to either of you.
Well, Lee, do you want to take it? Or do you want me to grab it?
Go ahead, jump on it.
This isn't a fish, you know. You got to.
Yeah, well, you know, long story short, you know, on ham radio, I've always taken an interest in, you know, communications in general. And it, you know, with me, always, you know, I love to help people, and I guess the combination of both just really kind of clicked for me. What I like about it the most is that I get to learn every time we do anything when it comes to weather, and also helping people. And, you know, SKYWARN has been around for, I can't really give you an ideal date, but it's been around for at least, say, 30 years. And if I've done some research on it, and I think it started off with just two guys wanting to do something to basically help out, and it just escalated into what it is today. And it's a very big network. Just about every county has some type of SKYWARN. Here in North Carolina is different than like in Tennessee, because Tennessee shares what they call an M-Tiers network, and it stands for Middle Tennessee Emergency Radio Service. And you got all your counties there that report to one net control operator, and they convey that to the National Weather Service. Unlike here, we just do different regions, like Charlotte covers Burke County and, you know, other areas as well. But we get it direct through chat and things like that. So, I mean, you know, it's what we're here for is basically a support system for NWS.
And you mentioned having a net controller, and I've worked with Eric McCord up here, who's our regional, I believe, District 7 SKYWARN coordinator for the Weather Service up in Morristown. And talk a little bit just why some places have that and other places don't.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm a net control operator, and, you know, with Lee, he's actually our assistant emergency coordinator. He could probably enlighten you on the EC on that behalf. So I'll let Lee kind of answer that one.
Well, and, you know, going with what John said, they also have a net controller, right, John?
Yeah, they have a net controller.
You know, it's just different ways that they have it set up. You know, the Tennessee method he has, I guess each county kind of has a...
They have their own liaison.
type deal.
Yeah, each county has their own liaison. For instance, like how we do it, we take our reports, and the net control operator is basically a liaison for the county, which they turn around and report it to M-Tiers. And, you know, the National Weather Service in Nashville actually has a ham radio station in the office with an operator taking the reports. So.
And so having the operator in the office, I can imagine, has some advantages, or just having a direct line straight to the forecasters, because sometimes in a high impact situation, there's a lot going on. You know, being media, I can understand this, and you have a lot going on at one time. It's easy to miss something, but having that one ham guy in there is like, hey, we've got something going on over here. You need to look at this. Can really be beneficial, I'd imagine.
Oh yeah, it's definitely beneficial, and, you know, before it, you know, reaches the media outlets, I'm sure, you know, it comes from our eyes out there in the field to us, and then we turn around and direct it to, you know, whoever, like for instance NWS. I know Greenville Spartanburg has ham radio liaison, but I'm not too sure if they listen to us. They may listen to us through the internet or other means, but I think that it actually provides a quicker route to get it to the media, to broadcast it. I know there was some talk that, from the time that they get the report at the media office, 5 minutes has passed. So, I mean, it's just like picking up a phone and saying, hey, this is what we got. NWS draws it up and sends it out as a warning. So, yeah, it's relatively pretty quick.
Well, and being in the Bristol area, your National Weather Service office is very ham friendly. Up Roanoke, Blacksburg area, they are very ham friendly, and I've actually heard some of the forecasters, some of the meteorologists on the radio talking with ham operators during storms, and that's kind of an impressive situation.
It really opens the door more to better feedback and better communication, which of course is the whole idea really behind ham radio, I'd imagine, and trying to get the information across in a quick manner, but also in a situation where maybe other lines of communication aren't open. I know in the past we've discussed on here other methods of getting information out after the storm, before the storm, or during the storm when communication lines are down. Talk a little bit, either of you, about how ham radio can really benefit when maybe cell phone towers go down or something like that happens.
Well, okay, well, Ricky, ham radio is all operated off DC. If the power goes off, we have generators that we could use, and, of course, batteries and solar power. For instance, we kind of ran into a situation you're probably familiar with when, Greenville, Spartanburg, I'm not sure if they took a lightning strike or what it was, but they lost the radar data, and they were blind. And, ham radio operators, and of course, your spotters that are out there with their eyes and ears and that kind of, particular setup. But as for, say, for instance, a Hurricane Hugo was to come through here again, and, the power grids are down, and, our radios will transmit during any kind of weather, as long as we got some kind of power source. Generator is usually the #1 choice because, you can set it up, it runs for hours, you ain't got to worry about your battery dying. And we can relay these, information to the proper channels. For instance, we could take our radio, and it's not just really local. I mean, we use high frequency as well. And the National Hurricane Center down in Florida, they've got an HF radio in their office down there, and they do what they call a hurricane watch net. And wherever the affected area is, say for instance, we had one off the coast here and it was coming inland, we'd have a nice little series of ham radio operators in the affected area relaying reports out to the National Hurricane Center, even if the power is out in that area. So they're that's a vital vein, because a lot of the reports that would come out of the area, that, how do they get in if there's no internet, there's no phone, there's no electricity, would be ham radio. So I mean, it's a very valuable, I call it the end of the world insurance policy. If you got one, it's good to have.
Well, and a friend of mine that works for Duke Energy, who they have contracted out to basically hang cell phone towers. When I talked to him about ham radio, and he said, that's a good idea, because the phone line, the phone signal goes into a line at some point. Said, there's nowhere in America where there's 100% underground lines. So at some point, that line's above ground. If you have a catastrophic event like Hugo or Andrew or who knows what, well, that's going to take out your phone lines. With ham radio, you still have your communication. And like John said, we have the most everything has a battery backup. The repeater we use for Charlotte Regional SKYWARN, it's connected with another group, and we've got a propane generator we're plugged into. So if power goes down, we've got emergency power, and it could realistically you know, we could station ourselves at a fire station, at a Red Cross building, anywhere. And I'm talking just on the local communications area. You know, and like John's talking, the high frequency, you know, that's worldwide.
Oh yeah.
And you can go into Nepal, where they had the earthquake just a while back. They had ham operators on the air moments after that earthquake happened.
And I was actually one of the relay stations for that for one day, and I tell you, it made me feel good, but also you got to be very dedicated to do it as well too. So, I mean, it's not just weather. I mean, I guess you could call earthquakes weather in a way. But like Lee said, we could deploy at any moment, anywhere on notice, and carrying very little equipment too.
Lee made a really good point that I never thought of before, but with all the lines eventually going above ground, it makes sense how so many lines go out after storms or tornadoes or something like that, because it's not just the sheer volume of the calls probably trying to go out, it's more oftentimes maybe the lines actually being destroyed. But either of you can take this. You mentioned high frequency, and for some of our viewers who maybe aren't as familiar with what high frequency is versus VHF, UHF, stuff like that, describe a little bit the difference between the two and what it means.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. If anybody has ever listened to an AM broadcast, say on your AM radio, FM radio in your vehicle, well, so I think the station Scotty operates out of has got a, you know, they operate off an HF frequency, which is 160 meters, and there's several different meters, and I'll just refer to it as bands. You got 160, you've got 80 meters, you got 75, you've got 60, 40, 30, all the way up to 1.25. And I tell you that, you know, the lower you, well, I guess you could say the higher you go, like 160 meters, it's a very noisy band, so you really wouldn't get very much activity if you're trying to pass traffic on there. And you're limited to about maybe, I'd say 300-400 miles. And then you go up to 80 meters, then your distance greatly increases up to 700. And then, of course, 40, you can get up there, and I've talked to Italy before on 40 meters, and then when you get into 20, basically 20 meters is the worldwide band. A lot of the shortwave is on there. The U.S. military is real close to ours, and of course NOAA, they do their weather facts over 20 meters because it's always active, I guess you could say. But basically, high frequency is like anything from 160 to 10, and then you start off on like 6 meters where your VHF portion sets in, and then you work your way up past like 2 meter, and then you go up to like 70 centimeter, which that's UHF, and a lot of the police and of course the fire department, they use that as well. That particular band is just basically for local communications. But you'd be very surprised what happened on those bands when a band opens. So we just had a band opening the other day on 6 meters, and I was talking to Europe. So it's all in, the propagation is, you could have a radio that does 200-300 watts up to 1,500 if the conditions are not just right. And weather actually has a factor, I should say, on our signals at times. But it doesn't hurt, but when the propagation is just right, you could talk anywhere in the world.
Well, and John, you know what I did over the weekend. I went up to Blowing Rock with a walkie-talkie, which is a 5-watt radio, and had my little homemade antenna, and made a contact 88 miles away.
Yeah.
And that's, I was thrilled to death about that, using basically VHF.
Yeah, and that, in reference, VHF is really hard to get out, and normal range is 40 to 50 miles on average. So you're talking 80 miles. That's really good distance, and that's kind of why the weather world, I should say, like the National Hurricane Center, and a lot of the hurricane guys, I should say, use 20 meters because they have almost a guaranteed channel into the affected areas, and even 40 meters is good for that as well.
So we're talking about distances, and you mentioned the word repeater once or twice here. What is the purpose of a repeater station, and what information is passed along to them?
Well, we use our repeater. Well, first, a repeater is basically something to where we could take our radio, and we got our input frequency into the repeater's input frequency, and what it does, it retransmits it out at a higher wattage. I think 100 watts is at kind of anywhere from 50 to 100 watts is average for a repeater, and you get great distance that way. And we have a series of repeaters we use. Like our local repeater is 145.230. And we use those repeaters basically to get information from that covers the whole Piedmont here. There's places in Burke County and Caldwell County that are kind of out of the question, but as for, just the Piedmont, if you have a mobile station, we can hear you. You could be in Hickory, and you reporting pea-size hail. And what you're doing is the repeater's actually on Spencer Mountain, and his signal's going from there, and the repeater's broadcasting it back out to all the stations that are on that frequency. So repeaters are very vital. And if, say so, we took a lightning strike on our repeater and we're to lose communications, we have other avenues like using simplex, just talking radio to radio too.
So it's really just another method of getting information out to a wider area, correct?
Exactly. And some of the amateurs too have directional antennas. I myself, I have a 13-element 13B2 beam, and it's a high gain antenna. And if I really had to, we could set up a relay. A lot of the old timers, they call them Elmers. They used to do that when they were rag chew, but if they would have a beam, they would kind of set them up in a certain way. That way they wouldn't miss anything. So if any station was operating simplex, one of the stations will hear it and they'll get the information needed.
Gotcha. All right. So going back just a little bit here, we mentioned the Hurricane Center and how they operate on VHF frequency, or 20 band, correct?
20 meters.
20 meters, sorry. Okay, so what is the advantage for them? It's really the distance, as you mentioned? So are they utilizing, I should say, different people to get the information to them, or is it direct from the impacted area to the Hurricane Center? Well,
I'm glad you mentioned that. I can actually explain it a little better. I meant to say this earlier. On 14325, they transmit from the National Hurricane Center to, just any station that can hear them, and 90% of the contacts they're looking for are in the affected area. And what they'll do is, a lot of the hams of, like myself, I have a weather station. And what they'll do is every so often they'll report the barometric pressure and their wind speed. That's usually what's the number one thing they're wanting to know in the affected area. And of course, if they've got any local reports of power outages and structural damage. But that's exactly what the Hurricane Center is looking for. They're looking for the stations in the affected area.
And so, Lee, being here in Charlotte and seeing some of the storms we have, what's some of the main things which you guys try to relay to weather servicing for Spartanburg? Since we kind of hit the Hurricane Center, let's focus more locally on some of the other impacts.
Well, fortunately, we have some pretty well-trained spotters here, and they'll relay one of our older hams. When we were kind of forming our Charlotte Regional SKYWARN group, he mentions years ago calling in and reporting a wall cloud, which, in effect, they brought up a warning, due to his report. They, let's see, of course, hail of any size, that's a given, but we do get some reports of strong lightning and stuff like that. Because, oh, there I am. Look, I'm on John's computer. But we'll get some stuff like, you know, strong lightning, because when a storm comes through, people get excited and they want to be helpful. You know, even though we're not looking for thunder and lightning and stuff, we still have to take note, because that leads into other things. You know, you have to recognize the danger there. But for the most part, you know, we look for wind, you know, 58 miles an hour.
You know, we look for pea-sized hail. Just, you know, anything that would you know, cause, you know, bodily harm or any kind of danger to life and property. And, you know, you would be very surprised on some of the reports we do get. And, you know, we take all reports and we log them down, whether they go into NWS or not. You know, that's basically a decision for whoever's running the chat or net control. But, you know, I have to agree with Lee. Some of the spotters we have out in the field in our group are very skilled. You know, I remember one in particular day last year, I believe it was in October. There was a storm that came up out of South Carolina that was tornadic, and I was doing net control, and it was going right through Cleveland County around the Kaiser community. And when, you know, another job for net control when you do SKYWARN is to keep your spotters as safe as possible. You don't want them to get hurt, and, you know, some of them you got your thrill seekers, and then of course you got your spotters. And if you got one that's coming right into the, you know, the brinks of danger, you want to do everything you possibly can to keep him out of danger. And at this time, this tornado-warned storm was going right towards an elementary school, and you know, I felt helpless in a way. But then my training kicked in, and I, you know, basically guided the spotter out of danger. And when he had actually came on the back side of it, he actually seen the wall cloud. So, and that was W4J. That was Dave Lee that at that time. Yeah. So
I remember.
Yeah, and that particular storm, I don't know if it ever touched down. Ricky, you may know, over in Granite Falls. It was that last year when they had that. It was either a funnel close to the ground or a brief touchdown of that tornado. It was that same storm.
Well, was that the cell that moved up through 3 or 4 counties and continued to be warm for a while, and then?
Yeah, that was it, and it is
around 2 or 3 o'clock.
cycling. Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't believe it ever touched down, but I do remember. I think Joey and them had a few videos of wall clouds and stuff like that from it. But I remember the folks in the Charlotte media were on air for a while with that system. So.
Yeah, I think there were several pictures that came out, but, you know, back on subject on that, you know, that's one of the things that we try not to do is put our spotters in, you know, harm's way. If we, you know, we have our radar pulled up, and we're not really supposed to say, oh yeah, we see this, we see that, because we're not meteorologists. But yet, when you kind of got to, when you have a spotter that's in imminent danger, you do everything you got to do to basically say, hey, you need to go this way, you need to go that way. And thank goodness for the maps, because, you know, if you do, I'm very unfamiliar with the area. I've gotten a little bit better since I've been here, but you know, knowing certain ways to get out of there is a good key too, with help of him. But I mean, there's a lot of different ways we could track in the field, and like APRS, it's automatic packing reporting system. A lot of ham radios are equipped with it, where they transmit a beacon every so often. So a lot of SKYWARN groups use that just in case a tornado knocks them off the road, they lose communication, their beacon's still on.
And so do weather balloons, because I remember you guys being excited to throw weather fest of tracking your weather balloon and the ping it was putting out.
Yeah, I tracked that all the way to Gastonia, believe it or not. I lost the signal in Gastonia.
Really? Huh. I never even thought of asking y'all for that, but I was interested where it went. I guess it went up there. Huh.
Well, I turned my antenna horizontal, because once you go up, it starts, you know, it's kind of vertical this way. If you keep it like this, it's horizontally. So.
Yeah. Well, we need to work with y'all next time, because they're doing balloon launches over the summer as well at UNC Charlotte, and see if we can get it somehow on APRS and track it, because I know we've done that with balloon launch with Brad Panovich and the NBC Charlotte folks at one time. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to Seth O'Neill on that. Because, I mean, he sat there and he named what ball it was transmitting at. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. You know,
Yeah.
he exactly, you know, he's a packet man anyway. He knows that stuff forward and backward, and I mean, he's the man.
Yeah, if anything broke at Weatherfest, I was pretty much just going to throw it at y'all and be like, hey, see if you can fix this. But one thing we didn't mention, and I see a lot in chat sometimes, is precipitation rate. And I see that thrown out on chat from ham radio operators. Is that something that gets relayed to you? And then I'm assuming it goes into flood advisories, flood warning, stuff like that?
Right. Yeah, we, you know, they want rainfall rates over an inch an hour. Personally, I try to wait 15 minutes before I give a report on rainfall rate. Now, if somebody calls in, hey, it's raining 4 inches an hour, you know, a lot of times that'll come in and then it's gone. So if you have 5 minutes of rain that's 4 inches an hour, you know, you've got a nice mud puddle out there. But we had some questions about that, and we did ask Greenville Spartanburg, when we have rainfall above an inch an hour, do you still want it? And their response was yes. And I think it has to do with the development of the area. You know, so many places around the Charlotte area, all of the suburbs, you know, you don't have the nice green leafy vegetation like you used to. So now you have a lot of runoff. And, you know, if you get 4 inches an hour for 30 minutes, you know, you're looking at Briar Creek in Charlotte starting to flood, and, you know, McDowell Creek and McAlpine Creek. All these different creeks are starting to rise because there's really nothing soaking up the rain. So, yeah, we especially if the spotter comes in and says, look, it's been raining for 15 minutes, and I've measured it, we're getting over an inch an hour, then that is definitely, that's going in. You know, that, yeah, it's going in.
Yeah, you know, flooding is it's actually one of the scariest weather phenomena besides lightning, of course. You know, you think I'm crazy when I say, oh, I'm not scared of a tornado. I am if it's barreling down on me. But, you know, you think of flooding. Flooding is, you know, it could happen at any given moment. And that's one of the things that we try to monitor, even if we don't even have a net up, Ricky. If we got a lot of rain in the area, there is always someone right there on our repeater trying to figure out, okay, is this flooding, is that flooding? We take reports consistently on that because, you know, we want to get the word out, okay, this is what's going on at this creek, and so-and-so said there's water covering, you know, Highway 70 over in Conover. So, I mean, flooding is one of the things we pay attention to, just like anything else. I mean, you think a lot of people look at flooding as, oh, let's go play in the water. The water's going to rise. Let's go catfishing. But it's all, you know, it's very dangerous. You know, dams can breach, levees can break, and lives can be lost.
Flooding is one of our #1 killers.
Yeah.
Ask the Kraken. You know what? His first week in Dallas, he flooded his Bentley.
Yeah.
Just like tonight, they're dealing with a lot of flooding out there in Texas and Oklahoma. I can imagine ham radio and SKYWARN's being pretty integral and getting reports up to them.
I am very certain. Yeah. And you know, SKYWARN, you know, it's another thing. SKYWARN is ran differently everywhere you go. For the viewers that may be watching, they may be interested in the kind of seeing what we do, you could go on YouTube and just type in SKYWARN nets. There's a few in the Dallas metro area that are very on cue and to the point on how we do things. So you can just Google Dallas SKYWARN or Dallas SKYWARN nets, and they'll pull up a bunch of them. Excuse me. So, but yeah, it's it can get very crazy at times, but we're glad to be here to do it.
2 final questions that I have, and I'll let y'all jump in with anything else you may have to mention. But first one being logical setup and the number of people that are typically on a net or something like that during, let's just say, a severe weather situation in the area.
Okay, I didn't catch the first part of that. If you could repeat that question one more time, I
Sure.
just, yeah.
Talk about how many people are usually involved in a net like this. I know we mentioned net controllers, we mentioned people out in the field or at home. Talk about a typical, amount of people who run a net like this during maybe a severe weather situation.
Okay. Lee, you want to grab this one? Or you want me to?
Yeah, I can jump. I mean, it just varies. John, he calls more nets. He gets in there and you know it's about availability. He's available a lot of times.
When he's not talking to aliens, right?
Right, when he's
Yeah.
not talking to aliens and harassing people, But no, I mean you could have as many as 60 people involved in a net, and the majority of them will just come check in, let you know, hey, I'm out here. I'm on the south side of Charlotte. If something, basically letting you know if something happens, I will be here. And then you have the active spotters that are involved with the net that are relaying, weather information. So you could have anywhere from just a couple of people to, a really big event. You throw a tornado warning out there, people come out of the woodwork. If it's a large storm, you have a nice squall line coming through. Man, people are turning on their radios. May not have had their radio on in like a year and a half, and that bad boy, they're kicking the dust out of it. So it just varies, and the time of day has a lot to do with it. You know,
Yeah.
during the work day, there's not as many people, but folks will still try to get in there.
Just like today, we had that severe thunderstorm warning for Burke and McDowell counties. We don't really, I guess in a way we kind of cover parts of McDowell, but, Burke County, it was just me and W4JL, David Ledford, and we called and gave our, updates, and we didn't have one single check-in. Well, an exception for Chris in one CRG, he came in there, but we had been a total of 3 check-ins for that storm, so. And as like Lee was talking about, it could be, like you said, up to 60. But if you was to take our coverage area and you draw a little dot in the center, that would be net control, then you start putting these dots all over the Piedmont. All right, and you've got 60 dots just covering all over the place, and you got this line, this bow echo squall line coming in. You've got some pretty good coverage, and you're definitely going to get reports, and that's kind of, why we inhibit, like, hey, you don't necessarily have to have, severe weather affecting your area to report or to check in. So we're a well-oiled machine. That kind of falls back into the training. We train every night at 8 o'clock. We do our thing. And as for net control, we can have, we have our voice net control, we have our chat net control, then we have our ones in the background doing the logging. I mean, we're a well-oiled machine, I guess you could say, on that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and a lot of folks, I'm just going to interject this. A lot of folks kind of, why do you have a net every night? Well, one is to help the net controller, trains him on, being able to pick out call signs, being able to get messages through the noise. But it also helps the spotters and, the people involved be able to check in, be able to give the pertinent information. The Piedmont Spotter Group, being the training net, we ask for a few things: name, location, your call sign, and that we would like to know the temperature. And that's just a few little things, but it actually gets your mind right, gets you listening to the net control operator, and then gets you giving back the information he's asking for. So, although it's, it's not a huge undertaking, it's not a huge training session, it's still training, and it's just an easy way to, get folks operating in a certain manner so it'll be effective during severe weather.
Getting a rhythm and kind of know what's going on and how to handle it.
Right.
So let's end this with one final question, and that's how Ham Radio has kind of changed since, when ham radio started, I imagine, and the whole SKYWARN thing started, the weather service, there wasn't AWS chat. There wasn't a lot of reports coming in. And most of the reports, the weather service likely came by a ham radio or telephone. Talk a little bit about maybe the percentage that you think or know still comes from ham radio versus the reports they get now, maybe from social media or from online sources, etc.
Well, back when I became an amateur radio operator in 2002, Facebook wasn't. There wasn't no Facebook. There wasn't no MySpace. You had email, of course, but you had Yahoo Chat. Repeaters. Even before I became an amateur radio operator, the basic concept still applies today on how SKYWARN and amateur radio and the weather all kind of work. They do a net, and then from the net it'll go to to the NWS and of course to the media outlets. Now I know for a fact that News Channel 5 over in Nashville actually has a ham radio on set, and Ron Howes, he's actually a ham radio operator, and he would listen to the M-Tiers links, and he always would have up-to-date, real quick weather reports, and the other news media outlets never did follow. So now, as of I should say a percentage, ham radio hasn't changed. The technology may have changed, but as for the operating concepts, haven't. But I think social media like Facebook, of course, the Spotter Network, and others to mention, social media has really put a decline, I guess you could say, in our reports, which is fine, because our group also includes social media into our our weather reporting as well, because I do a live stream on my nets and stuff, and when we do net control, we get probably, I'd say, 5% of our reports come through social media. The rest are amateur radio. Sometimes text messaging. Just really depends. But social media is kind of the killer of ham radio, but ham radio has kind of stepped it up too. I mean, they've got amateur radios now you can search Facebook on. So it's just I would say technology's changed, and I think it's I don't think ham radio is going to change much in operating techniques, but I think we've kind of put I guess the peanut butter and jelly together and made a nice little sandwich with our group.
But as you mentioned before, and Lee, I'll give you 1 minute afterwards, it's still the method of communication when all else fails.
Right.
Oh yeah. If social media falls, internet goes down, we're right back to where we were. And that's why I kind of like my older radios. I've got a Yaesu FT847, and it will operate. I think these newer ones like the Flex 1500s, they operate off an operating system. And they don't require internet, but if something was to go down, like, okay, you get an EMP blast, yeah, that will kill a lot of the radios, but not the older radios, because they don't really have microchips and things like that now.
Well, and I was going to say, if the viewers, the ones that are watching tonight and the ones that come in later and watch the rerun, if they want to see different ways ham radio operates, there's a great event coming up, and it's all over the place, called it's Field Day. Just like the field day you had in elementary school. It's all fun and everybody's happy. There's food and snacks and friends and all that good stuff.
There's food and snacks, guys. You got to go now.
Yeah. I know. I mean, some people, we were talking to a guy the other night, they're having, oh my goodness, not London broil, prime rib. So there you go. Look at John. There you go. But field day, starts on Friday, June the 26th, and runs through Sunday the 28th. And ham radio clubs all over the United States, they'll be setting up. And the first one I went to, I was amazed. Within 15 minutes of getting there, they were on the air talking around the world. Had the radio set up, they had the antenna up, generators running, And I mean, within 15 minutes of stepping on the property, they had the radio operating.
Yeah,
So,
you know, Field Day is, what is that, National Day of Emergency Preparation for Amateur Radio. This kind of freshens our skills. Like if we was to go into a damage or disaster area, and we could just go set up our radios and our generators, and it's a big contest between amateur radio clubs who makes the most contacts, basically. It's real fun. It's free. The public's welcome to come out and play radio. They don't have to have a call sign as long as there's a control operator there. And we get points for meteorologists to come by and sheriffs and all that good stuff. So if you're in the area, you can come by Lenore, Ricky.
Maybe a little far, but we'll see what we can do up here in Bristol, the Tri-Cities, and see if maybe we can't get a story together since about a week and a half away now or so.
Yeah, believe it or not, I know for a fact there's one going on in Bristol. I just seen it posted on Facebook here just the other day. So
Okay.
yeah, you got some Holston people going places. A lot of folks head down to Roan Mountain. Just
and they're
all
remote areas. They go out in remote areas where there's no power, nothing. I mean, so it would be interesting to maybe you could find a ham radio club out there. I'll help you try to locate that if you want me to, Ricky. I can send you information on a local club that may be, wanting to, be setting up near in Bristol. I know there's a club in Bristol doing Field Day weekend. Now, where, I don't know. I just kind of seen where it was posted. But
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we'll correspond on that. See if we can put something together, 'cause we're always looking for some weekend stuff, and especially if we can involve weather, then everyone always loves that. So.
Oh yeah.
All right, so as my final question, if folks wanted to listen to maybe some of the frequencies, maybe they have a scanner or something at home that they can listen on, is there a way they can do that?
Oh yeah, there's you could listen to us on 145.230. It's got a pretty good footprint, and it's over on Crowder's Mountain, and also you got the 147.94 as well. And there's a couple other ones that I'm unfamiliar with, but I think they're 220 repeaters. And if you don't have a scanner and if you have the internet, you can go on Broadcastify and just follow the links to Charlotte to tell you, ask you where you want to, what state you want to listen to, which county. Just go into Mecklenburg County and it'll pull up a list, and you'll see Charlotte Regional SKYWARN, and just click on the little player, and it'll broadcast us out over the air live. And Ricky, if you wouldn't mind, I got a few links, websites that for the viewers that may be interested in ham radio. Give that to them. Okay, for those who may be interested in ham radio, it's just a test you take. It costs $12. Some places it's cheaper. You can go to www.qrz.com, and you could go to the exam sections and study for your test there. It's free. Or if you go to www.arrl.org/exams, you could study for your test there. It's free. So I'll tell you what, it was very, very easy. You don't have to do Morse code anymore. You can learn that as you go. And I would recommend it. And it's a very good hobby if you enjoy helping people, or if you just want to talk to people all over the world. You have that opportunity. And you can also talk to aliens. Literally.
And the Black Minute Suits will be visiting John tonight later.
Yeah, I imagine. It just tickled me about that. It's a long story.
Alrighty, anything else y'all two want to mention?
No, that's about it. I'm glad you had us on the show, and if anybody else is interested and wants more information, they can look me up on Facebook. And John Crowe at Facebook, or you can N4LBX1 @gmail.com.
Sounds good. And both the Carolina Spotter Group, Piedmont Spotter Group, and the Charlotte Regional SKYWARN are both on Facebook, correct?
Yeah, they're both on Facebook, and we actually like us, and we actually post every warning for our coverage area too. Anytime it comes out, we got someone on social media posting that.
Alrighty, sounds good. John and Lee, thank you for joining us tonight. This has been another edition with a reduced panel members tonight because everyone else was off except me. But we got through it, and it was a good show anyway. This was the podcast for June 17th, 2015, talking about ham radio. And then next week, I believe we have an author coming on to talk about her book. And, of course, you can always follow our latest posts online at Facebook and Twitter. Search Carolina Weather Group on Facebook and Carolina Weather Group on Twitter to view the latest shows that are upcoming. Have a great night, everybody.